how's it going, everybody, and welcome back to the Pennsylvania in Berwind. And today we're going to be doing some work in the Grafton Dockside area. We're going to be continuing work in the Grafton Dockside area. We've been here for a little bit. And we're going to be adding a business district into this area. I thought this would be kind of a different thing to build, and it seemed to fit this sort of oddball location that I have in between the main line and the coal dock tracks. So that's what we're going to be working on today. It's kind of a fun build. It's a little different. We're not doing anything sort of like track related or, related directly to an industry or anything like that. So this is just kind of a cool background scene. And I think it's something that you can add to your own route pretty easily without really too much effort. And you'll see how I kind of manage it. So the first thing that I really did here was get together a couple of buildings that I thought would look good as like business offices. And believe it or not, there's really not a whole lot of these available that I was able to find at the very least on the download station or anything like that. So these are just a few that I thought looked pretty good, at least good enough to be in between two main track areas. So decent enough for close-ups and, not so high poly that they're going to tank anything. So that's what I came up with here. I'd like to see some more of these in the game. I even looked on TurboSquid and CG Trader to see if there was anything that I could port, but I, again, didn't really find anything specifically that I loved. Particularly with this height, I guess. I was looking for buildings that were only like 5, 6, 7, 8 stories tall, not like, towers or anything like that. So, Toomey or whatever his name is has a few towers that you can use, but they just seemed a little bit too big for this particular usage here. So once I got the buildings picked out, I wanted to get the road sort of lined up here, and I'm doing handmade roads here, and you'll see why. I wanted to do this sort of decorative, I don't know what you call this, like a main road with this median thing in the middle. I thought that this would kind of make the area feel a little bit more polished in terms of like a ritzy, office district or something like that. So later on, I try to bring in some details, some flowers and stuff like that, but we'll get there. So my initial idea was just to sort of get this sort of fancy road, and I'm saying sorta a lot. Sorry about that. It's been a while since I've recorded these videos. So yeah, bringing in, using this median asset here, and I actually first started with this Epcot road median. And then I switched it out to a median a JR median that's not available yet. But for now, I'm using these Epcot road medians, and they look pretty decent. They're not bad. I've used them a million times in the past, and they definitely serve their purpose. But yeah, some higher detailed medians would also be pretty helpful. But I'm using these to basically outline the area of where these parking lots are going to be and the property for each one of these particular businesses. And of course, I have a lot of fun doing these hand-laid roads, and I think it really improves the way that the area looks. So I highly, highly recommend giving that a chance, giving it a try yourself. Again, I always say that it is way more time-consuming to do this, but the effect is really cool when you can get some really complex intersections like this. Like, there's no spline-based roads in the game like this available with this median and different intersections and stuff like that. You have to hand lay them. And again, I know that this isn't like a main focal point of the route or anything like that, but it is a background scene, and it is in between two major track areas. So I thought that it would be worth it to actually spend the extra time and make some of these handmade roads through this area. So one thing that I want to talk about during this video is, I guess, like, what is it I'm trying to say here? This sort of like lack of inspiration that I'm kind of feeling right now. Like, so I've been, doing some work on the P&B here. I've got the other project that I'm working on, the North Carolina Transportation Museum. And I've noticed that I'm kind of hitting like a creative block of sorts. And it really got me thinking about like why that is. And I come to realize that it's not necessarily the game, and it's not the assets, because that's what I thought it was. Initially, I was like, man, am I just getting bored of like using all these assets, the same assets over and over again, and like building some of these similar scenes, and I feel like I'm just doing the same thing like nonstop, constantly. But then that got me really thinking about like, why am I building sort of the same stuff? And what I mean by like the same stuff is like, I've been building like a lot of housing developments and a lot of like rural, like suburban sort of areas. Like, obviously this is not a suburban area. This is sort of a little bit more of a urban environment, and, you know, in a downtown area or, you know, business district or whatever you want to call it. But for the most part, I've been building a lot of these, like neighborhoods and stuff like that. And I started to wonder, like, why am I focusing on this? And it kind of occurred to me that, you know, since I lost my job a year ago at this point, and also because of COVID, you know, I'm not really getting out too much. And where I am getting out is mostly in my neighborhood, and I live pretty much in the suburbs in New Jersey, so I'm just seeing a lot of like suburban housing and, you know, basic things like that, and strip malls and that sort of thing. So I guess that's just sort of what I'm internalizing and what I've been building a lot, because that's just what I'm seeing. So like when I was commuting to the city every day and I was riding the Jersey Transit into Manhattan, you know, I had an hour train ride into work and an hour train ride home. And I spent a lot of time looking out the window and looking at, you know, Secaucus and Newark and, you know, the whole Northeast corridor going up there. And that gave me a lot of ideas for, you know, things to build and, you know, scenes to detail and, you know, things like that. But now I don't have that. And I'm pretty much just been kind of like going to the grocery store and going for walks and stuff like that around my local neighborhood. So instead of getting inspiration to build, you know, really complex, detailed industrial scenes, I'm, I guess, just getting inspired to build these like, you know, suburban type scenes. So I guess really what I'm trying to say is that's more of an observation about my own build style and where I'm getting my inspiration from. And I'm also the type of person who tends to really get inspired and interested by like local railroads where I live. So when I was in Rochester, I was really interested in all the local Rochester railroads and, you know, CSX out there and the LANL and all those lines out there. I get really, really inspired by that kind of stuff. And now that I'm in Jersey, I'm like really inspired by, you know, a lot of the stuff that I see in Jersey, but I'm not like, you know, getting out and doing those things. So I think it's just, I'm kind of in, I say this all the time too, like I'm in a funk, right? Am I in a funk? I don't know. I think it's just a little bit of a build block at the moment. And, you know, as I watch some of this playback of my build here, it does sort of almost feel like, I don't want to say like my build style is getting lazy, but I'm sort of able to reflect on that and see where I'm sort of just doing cookie cutter type stuff just to lay things out really quickly. And the other thing with me is that with the P&B in particular, this is a very big build, and I'm spending a lot of time trying to cover as much ground as possible and fill up a lot of areas, you know, maximize the space and everything like that. And because of that, you know, progress is a little bit slower, but I can't really give a lot of attention to individual industries as much as I would like to. And that's sort of like where I really enjoy, you know, building in this game, is maybe focusing in on like the paper mill, for example. You know, you go back a few episodes to the Huntington paper mill. You know, I had a lot of fun building that because I could focus just on the one industry and you know, really get immersed in how the buildings are going to be laid out and where the parking lots are going to be and what pipes are going where and this, that, and the other thing. Whereas, you know, when I get to this whole Grafton area here, I'm really focused on like filling up a lot of space. Like this area is huge. There is so much stuff that I need to like lay out here, and I'm trying to like put buildings in here that are going to just cover a lot of ground, you know, like big warehouses with big parking lots and stuff like that. So I don't have to like put a million buildings down, and I don't have to detail like a million scenes. So that does kind of complicate things a little bit. I do, you know, like to focus more on these smaller things. I like doing these roadways and stuff like that. But a big project like this, I'm kind of like, I guess I kind of feel pressure to try to get as much done as possible and cover as much ground as possible because there's just so much to do, and it's just such a long project. And I'm not trying to like just get it done just to be finished. You know, it's all about the process of it and stuff like that. But anyway, I thought that was just some, you know, little interesting observation that I've noticed about myself and some of this, some of my build style. And, you know, I'm sure I'm not the only one dealing with this sort of lack of inspiration and being home. Obviously, we're all in the midst of you know, the 2020, 2021 pandemic, COVID, everybody's home, everything's screwed up right now. So, you know, we're all kind of like experiencing this same, I'm sure a lot of us are experiencing the same sort of like roadblock right now. So I thought that was just something worth pointing out. I'm not trying to like highlight my flaws or something like that, but, you know, collectively, it can be kind of tough to find inspiration when you're just kind of staring at, you know, some of the same stuff constantly. All right, so anyway, back to the build here. At this point, I'm beginning to move the main line out of the way. It was a little bit too close to where I was building here, and at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it, but then I made the executive decision to just move the main line out of the way and to create kind of a loop here with this road, because I wasn't really sure what to do. I had the idea for this main strip, the main road, and then it just kind of ended right there right here. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. So let me maybe make like a loop or something like that. So this is it right here. I spared you guys the boredom of watching me place a million splines. But yeah, so the idea was just to wrap around the entire complex there. And then, you know, at a later date, if I want to expand out and add some more buildings and make it a bigger business district, that's totally doable. There's space for that. And, you know, we can move the roads around and stuff like that. So the option is there, but, you know, for now, I didn't want to spend a ton of time making some massive, you know, multi-blocked business district here. I thought, you know, this is a model, essentially. I'm not, you know, this isn't City Skylines. I'm not trying to model an entire city street for street or anything like that. So really what I wanted to do was just sort of create the suggestion of like a business district and sort of just get the essence of, you know, the business district right there. We don't need to go and make these scenes super deep or go, you know, way over the top with some of this stuff. Although sometimes I do, you know, and that's fine too. But in this particular situation, I didn't think that it was necessary. And, you know, before I get too much further in this build, I'm going to point out that I do leave this build largely undetailed. For the most part, it did take me a really long time to just get to the point of where I completed it, or where I decided to cut myself off. And that was really just to be able to get working on this video and get it out to you guys. So I will come back in subsequent videos or live streams or whatever else and add more details as needed. But for the time being, it's sort of like just some rough details. Like right here, I'm trying to like throw down some grasses and shrubs just to sort of like create a perimeter along the edge of this road here. And then I got bored with that and I moved on. I was like, you know what, I'm going to come back to this and revisit it, which I haven't done since then. But I will do. It needs to be forested properly, and this just wasn't really looking right to me. So I haven't decided if I want like a really dense forest here, or if it needs to just be sort of a suggestion of a forest and it could be some sparse trees. I don't know. Maybe I'll even put a park there. I'm not sure. It's not really that important at the moment. So I'll just sort of leave it for now. And you guys will probably leave me, you know, suggestions down in the comments and let me know what you think. So now here I made the switch to the newer medians, and again, these are JR medians. They're not available yet. I don't know when they will be available or how they'll be available, but eventually they will be, and I'm going to use them for now because they look really great, and there's different like widths of them. I think there's a 12, an 8, or a 12, a 10, and an 8, I think. I used all three of them through here, so they look really good. They just look really great. So hopefully they'll be released eventually so you guys can also get your hands on them and put them to use. But until then, that Epcot median is perfectly usable and perfectly fine. You just need to decorate it a little bit to sort of hide some of the inconsistencies in the grass and like the curb there. So one of the tricks that I use with when I'm doing these medians, or sidewalks for that matter, when you have a point that overlaps just a little bit, you can end up with what's called Z clipping, Z clipping. So that's where you kind of see the two splines that are overlapping kind of like flashing. It doesn't know, the game doesn't know which to render. Is it going to render the one spline or the other spline? So what I'll do is I'll go into the spline height tool and just lower one of those splines by like 1/10 of a meter, like whatever it is, 0.01 on the thing, and that is just enough to offset it so that the Z clipping stops, and it's not such a big difference in height that you'll see any gap or anything like that. So that's just a little trick there. I use that all the time when I've got sidewalks that are kind of like meeting on a corner, or if you have two that are kind of overlapping in any way. It'll work with pretty much any spline point where things overlap and you get that Z clipping. Okay, so now we're moving along down the main line. Well, actually, I guess we're kind of in between the main line and this coal dock track here. And I didn't want to just fill it in with just filler scenery like, you know, grasses and shrubs and stuff like that. It didn't really feel right. So I kind of loosely kit bashed this warehouse sort of thing here. Again, I don't end up detailing this, but I rough it out and just get it in place, get the suggestion of it there for now. Just so I kind of have like a rough, this is all just like a rough draft, you know what I mean? And what I'm doing, and I did it earlier and I did it with this whole area, is that I'm sort of sinking down the, where the buildings are by, I think it's maybe like 1 meter or 2 meters or something like that. Just a little bit to create a little definition between where the tracks are and where the actual businesses are. And I think that that's a really good way to add some depth to a scene by changing some of the height values a little bit, especially with the track. Having the track built up a little bit, like on a little bit of a fill, looks way more realistic than just having it completely flat on the ground. So any time that I can do that and just sort of like bring down the surrounding area or bring the track up just a bit, it makes a world of difference. And I think we should be able to see that a little bit in the outro cinematics. I'm not sure, I can't remember, but we'll if not, I'll try to include it in there. But that's definitely something that you guys can take away and try on your own builds for sure. Just try, you know, adding a little bit of 3D depth, you know, up and down. Even in the really flat areas, I try to add a little bit of just some hills, you know, get the terrain height tool, turn the sensitivity really, really low, all the way down, turn it all the way down, and, you know, set the tool to like a medium or a small size, and just sort of go up and down on the areas that are flat, just to add a little bit of depth definition. Makes a huge difference. It keeps, you know, makes the shrubs and trees and grasses and everything look a million times better. Okay, so at this point, yeah, back to the road. So at this point, I'm working on this intersection here. Obviously, I have to try to make something work. So one of the interesting things about doing hand-laid roads is, you know, I'm not going to do hand-laid roads for every single road. So there's going to be these instances where my hand-laid roads are going to intersect with regular spline roads. So this is a perfect example of how to kind of blend those two together. And it's not easy. It can be a little time consuming and a bit of a pain in the butt. But there it is. I mean, it looks pretty good. And really all I had to do was just delete the spline in the middle, in the middle of the intersection there, and raise the terrain up to cover the edge of the road spline itself, and then put some asphalt texture down. And then I even used one of the thick, the stop line, the white stop line, right on the edge of the spline to even hide it even more. So it's very, very subtle. And, you know, if you're just sort of going through the area on a train, you're never going to really notice that transition between a spline road and a hand-laid road or anything like that. So definitely a trick, tip, whatever, you know, you could take that away too. And obviously you can do this in sort of any situation. I was even considering adding some extra lanes along the side of the spline road, but I was like, nope, that's just too much work for me right now. I can't be bothered with that. This is fine. This is good enough. And this is a pretty cool intersection too. I'm not going to lie. Watching some trains go through here is really cool. And if this was real life, I would imagine that there was probably a lot of accidents at this crossing, just because the crossing is like right through this intersection. This four-way intersection. I would imagine that it's probably a pretty busy spot. Yeah, anyway. So those road markings there, I was trying to put down the RXR or whatever, decal markings. And it's on a hill, so there's just no way to get that to match up. So I just deleted it. I'm not going to bother. Here at this point now, I'm trying to work my way down towards the yard itself and start filling in some of these areas. Originally, I was going to do an underpass here where the road goes underneath the train tracks. But I decided, since we're at this lake and the water table or whatever, the water level, it would be, you know, pretty close to, you know, the surface. So an underpass would flood pretty much. That's what I'm trying to say, is the underpass would flood. So I did totally 86 the idea of the underpass. Trying to add in some water here, a little water feature, like another little swampy spot. Again, because I'm figuring we're right at like the level of the lake. So there's going to be a lot of areas around here that are going to be kind of flooded, or, you know, just happens to be like a lot of wetland. I'm picturing, you know, Secaucus, New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, you know, where a lot of industry was pretty much just built on fill dumped into these swampy areas. So that's a lot of what my inspiration has been for this area here. And this is a pretty cool spot. Also, again, you know, a different kind of a scene where I'm kind of blending this urban and industrial setting with some more of this like natural, naturey, swampy settings. And I think it's a really good contrast, especially, you know, for screenshots or, you know, when you're driving around or anything like that. It makes for some pretty cool contrasty scenes. So I'm pretty happy with that. Again, I probably could have gone a little bit further with some of the detail in here. This is like the 15th swampy lake thing that I've placed in probably the last 3 episodes. I've done multiple of these, so I'm kind of feeling a little burned out on making these. So I kind of just slapped down some grasses and some shrubs really quick. Really didn't think too much about it. Plus I was getting towards the end of this episode, so I was like, all right, let me just fill this in really quick and just try to make this work. But you know, it works. You know, I could spend some more time on it, but you can spend, you know, tons of time on any scene, on anything. So it's important to make that decision as to when to call it quits, when to move on, or, you know, the opposite of when you're just sort of rushing through a scene. And I kind of just rushed through this, to be perfectly honest. I'll admit it. But again, you know, I'm going to be coming back to a lot of this stuff because covering a massive area like this is really just... It'll burn you out, man. it'll burn you out. There's a lot to think about. Every time I load up this map, and I have to really start thinking and making decisions about, you know, what is going to go here, what's going to go there, how is this going to, and not only just that, but how is it all going to connect together? How am I going to make all of these scenes flow from one to the next in somewhat of a coherent way, and without overdoing it? And speaking of overdoing it, I'm probably going to have to backpedal a little bit on some of the grasses and shrubs and things like that around here, because I'm afraid that when it's all said and done, everything is put together, this is just going to be an absolutely lag central part of town. Like the entire Grafton area. There's just so much going on. There's so many baseboards. It's going to be so dense. I mean, even if I fill up like 50% of it with trees, the other 50% is going to be buildings and train cars and track and all these like high polygon, you know, assets and stuff like that. Maybe it won't be so bad, but this area is just so stinking huge. So I don't know. We'll see. Usually when I'm building, I'm trying not to restrict myself too much. It's very easy for me to say to myself, oh, let me not do this because, you know, it's going to hurt somebody's frame rate or whatever. But then I don't put down details. I don't complete the scenes that I want to complete them in the way that I want to complete them. So when I'm building, I just say, you know what, just put as much stuff down as you want. And if I need to backpedal, I can backpedal. It's easy. It's easier for me to just, you know, overpopulate something and then scale it back if I need to, than put that restriction on myself. Plus, who wants to, you know, put a restriction on themselves? It's like restricting my creative art vision or whatever, you know. I don't want to restrict my artistic idea of an area. So again, you know, that kind of goes into what I'm working on here. I'm placing down streetlights, and I had to sort of make a decision about how many I wanted to place down. Not only for one, because they're just a real pain to put down, but also two, they're pretty high poly, and you know, they're going to eat up your frame rate pretty quick, especially with all the cars and stuff like that. So I had to be kind of selective with those sorts of details. I mean, I would love to place streetlights all over the place, like a lot of streetlights, but I don't think that is a really realistic view of how to get, you know, a scene put together for this particular game. So the last thing that I'm working on here is I wanted to add some landscaping to these medians, and it didn't work out. I wanted to put like some kind of planters or flower pots or something like that along the median to just decorate it a little bit more nicely. Like I said, I wanted this to be like sort of high class area sort of feeling. But I didn't find any assets that I liked, so I ended up just completely aborting that idea. And as I find things, I'll have to come back and maybe redecorate the area. I would like to put, I don't know, I'm just thinking like some kind of planters or flower pots or something like that, just to spruce things up and add some more visual appeal. But maybe I don't really need to do too much of that. I don't know. You know, it's one of those things where at the time it seems necessary, but maybe it's not necessary. And I'll figure it out as I develop the scene, develop the route a little bit more as time passes. So at this point, I'm trying to add some detail to the textures by placing down some textures that are cracked and broken up road, because who wants just a plain cracked asphalt texture for your parking lot? You need to, you know, mix things up a little bit somehow, you know? And even though I didn't fully detail, you know, the edge of the parking lots or anything like that, you know, this is just how we're going to leave it for now. So anyway, we're going to jump into some cinematics here, because that's all I got for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you next time.